voice of free speech. The truth delivered. Common sense for the American people. Welcome to the Scott Jennings Show.
So-called moderate Democrat Andy Beshear outed as a radical. We have the shocking audio. Questions about improper dark money swirling around Kamala Harris's 2024 campaign. And illegal aliens found on voter rolls across the country. It is Tuesday, February 10th. Common sense for the American people. This is Scott Jennings on Salem. Breaking news just as we go on the air today. FBI Director Kash Patel has just released images of a person of interest in the Nancy Guthrie kidnapping. They're circulating now on social media. Man in a ski mask on Nancy Guthrie's front porch will follow this story. Also in the news, a federal judge in California has tossed out that state's ban on ICE agents wearing masks. Judge says it violates the Constitution's Supremacy Clause, another L for Governor Gavin Newsom. You know that thing, by the way, they say never happens? Well, it happened again. A jury in Massachusetts has convicted an illegal immigrant of voting. Fox News reporter Aisha Hasni tells the tale in Cut 5.
We're talking about a 59-year-old illegal immigrant who's been in the country for years, stole someone else's identity, and then voted in the 2024 presidential election. Take a look at this photo here. This is Lina Maria Arovio Hernandez. In this picture, you can see her, Martha, wearing that I voted sticker that we all get when we go to cast our ballots.
The illegal was also apparently involved in a scheme to steal $400,000 in taxpayer benefits. Once again, the thing they say never happens has happened, and it's happening all over the country. Homeland Security official Joseph B. Edlow testifying before Congress this morning. Listen to this, Cut 8.
Over the past year, USCIS has made nearly 33,000 fraud referrals to law enforcement, a 138% increase over previous years. We conducted thousands of site visits to homes and workplaces and thousands of social media checks to ensure aliens aren't espousing anti-American sentiment. Moreover, our fraud detection and national security team completed over 21,000 investigations, identifying fraud in approximately 65% of those cases. In Operation Twin Shield in Minneapolis-St. Paul back in the fall, we uncovered marriage fraud, visa misuse, and student visa abuses, leading to denials of immigration benefits, arrests, and removal proceedings. This work led to Operation Paris, where we continue re-examining thousands of refugee cases in Minnesota, conducting thorough background checks and in-person reviews.
Folks, if it wasn't obvious to you before, wake up. The illegal immigration crisis is real, and you are being robbed blind. And this just into the show. New today, Jamie Comer of the House Oversight Committee, he's the chairman, is now looking into illegal aliens appearing in jury pools and on voting rolls in Michigan. More political news. One thing is clear. The Democrats have learned nothing from their defeat in 2024. Let me introduce you to the supposed moderate Democrat candidate for president, Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear. Now, we are told relentlessly by the media that Beshear is a moderate, the reasonable Democrat who can talk to people in red America. Well, yesterday, Andy Beshear went on The View, and in a matter of minutes, he obliterated that myth. There was no moderation, only madness. Remember when Kamala Harris was outsmarted by the brainless, cackling hens over there? Well, Beshear proved to be even dumber and more radical than Harris ever was. When you strip away the accent and the aw shucks, what you're left with is a Democrat who plays moderate in tone but carries water for the radical left. Let's start with the most disturbing issue, mutilating children with transgender surgeries. We've been here before. Kamala Harris ran on this. Surgeries for minors? Sure, she says. Taxpayer-funded surgeries for inmates? Sure. The American people recoiled, of course. You'd think Democrats might have learned something. Have they? Well, you tell me. On The View, Andy Beshear, the supposed moderate, defended mutilating children with life-altering, irreversible surgeries because he said God wants us to do it? Cut one.
But we rarely talk about the why. People want to know what drives us, especially in a world with social media where everyone's looking for the next authentic thing. For me, that's my faith. Most of the decisions I make are based on that golden rule that says we love our neighbor as ourselves, and that parable of the Good Samaritan that says everyone is our neighbor. And so when I've taken actions like vetoing the nastiest piece of anti-LGBTQ legislation that ever came through my state, I described it in those terms. I said my faith teaches me that all children are children of God. And I didn't want people picking on those kids.
Absolutely disgusting. Andy Beshear, one of these Democrats who uses religion and faith to justify every terrible thing they want to do, and they try to shame common sense Christians in the process. To these radicals like Beshear, faith is a punchline, nothing more than a political cudgel. There's nothing worse in politics or in the church than a wolf in sheep's clothing. And while Andy Beshear is invoking God, the medical consensus is moving the other way. Europe is pulling back. Doctors' groups finally admitting there's a lack of evidence. Long-term data shows regret, sterilization, and irreversible harm. The science and most of Western civilization is screaming to stop this madness, and yet Andy Beshear is telling you with a straight face that God wants you to mutilate these children. This is not compassion. It is not faith. It is moral depravity dressed up as virtue. On another issue where Democrats are wildly out of step with reality, voter ID, an 80-20 issue if there ever was one. Virtually everyone supports it. Democrats, Republicans, independents, minority voters. And yet here is Andy Beshear on The View explaining why it is unreasonable to ask Americans to prove they are citizens before registering to vote. Here's cut two.
Voter ID is something that a large majority of Americans support. Kentucky does require voters to show an ID for federal and state elections. Where do you fall on the SAVE Act specifically?
Well, I consider myself pragmatic. You know, I think that we can agree that election security is an important thing. But when you create policies that are so onerous, you push people out who have the right to vote, who should be able to register. And so I think on any policy, you got to look at what's reasonable.
Andy Beshear says it's not reasonable for Americans to prove they are citizens to register or show ID in order to vote. You need an ID to fly, buy beer, open a bank account, rent a car, enter the very capital where Beshear has his office. But to decide who governs the United States, Andy Beshear says that is asking too much. This is from the same party that lectures you endlessly about defending democracy. They don't want secure elections. They want unguarded elections. Again, there's nothing moderate about this. It is radical and deeply unpopular. And finally, the mask coming all the way off on immigration. Here's Andy Beshear on ICE, cut 3.
Well, every ICE agent should be withdrawn from every city and every community that they're in.
Every agent, every city, every community. Andy Beshear has become the latest Jefferson Davis wannabe, believing that immigration laws simply don't apply in blue jurisdictions. Beshear knows this is what the radical Democratic base wants, so he spinelessly plays along instead of taking a common sense stand, which says, let's just simply enforce long-standing immigration law. Remember, this is the Democrat that we are told is the moderate. So let us be clear about what we're dealing with. On child transgender surgeries, Beshear, the moderate, sides with the activists, the trans cult, over parents and science. On voter ID, he sides with chaos over confidence. On immigration enforcement, he is thrown in with open borders and with the 20 million illegal aliens over the rest of America's actual citizens. If this is the Democrats' moderate, what does that tell you about the rest of their party? Andy Beshear didn't just go on The View yesterday. He exposed a Democratic Party so captive to its radical base that even its moderates can't tell the truth anymore. And ladies and gentlemen, the American people are watching. This is Common Sense for the American people. Scott Jennings broadcasting to you on Salem. A word from our friends at Done with Debt. If you're stressed about getting out of debt, it is go time for you. Listen to this. According to the Fed, many banks are tightening their standards. That means right now, may be your best window to negotiate settlements before these lenders tighten even further. Done with Debt is one of the best I've ever seen at navigating debt relief. Last year, they enrolled over $100 million in debt for our listeners and others. Done with Debt helps you through the entire process so that you keep more of your paycheck every month. Imagine waking up without this weight on your shoulders and doing it without taking out another loan or filing for bankruptcy. Don't wait for the lenders to tighten up their policies. Visit donewithdebt.com. Do it now. Talk with a debt specialist. It is free to do so, and it takes but a few minutes. That is donewithdebt.com. When we come back, Clay Fuller joins us of Georgia. He has President Trump's backing to replace Marjorie Taylor Greene in Congress. Stay with us. Hey, it's Scott. I want to talk to you about our friends at Balance of Nature. You can find them, by the way, at balanceofnature.com. They have this thing called the Balance of Nature Whole Health System. These supplements are perfect for a resolution in the new year. It's kind of tough to stick with New Year's resolutions, and that's why Balance of Nature's Whole Health System supplements are one of the easiest ways to do it. They're very versatile. You do 2 scoops of fiber and spice and mix it easily into drinks, and it adds a warm, aromatic depth. You can also open 3 of your fruit supplements and mix the powder into a smoothie, or sprinkle 3 of the veggie supplements over one of the savory dishes that you're having for dinner. It's called Balance of Nature's Whole Health System. These supplements include 47 ingredients of 100% whole fruits, vegetables, spices, and fibers, perfect for your daily routine. 50% off if you do it now for 1 year when you subscribe to the Whole Health System from our friends at Balance of Nature. Get it at balanceofnature.com.
Ready for more common sense? Here's CNN's senior political commentator, New York Times best-selling author, and America's favorite political pundit, Scott Jennings.
It is Tuesday, February the 10th. My first guest today, District Attorney from Northwest Georgia. He works in 4 different counties. He has argued before the Georgia Supreme Court. He is a lieutenant colonel and a deputy staff JAG officer in the Air National Guard, and he is running in the special election March the 10th to replace Marjorie Taylor Greene in Congress. Clay Fuller is here. Welcome into the Scott Jennings Show, Mr. Fuller.
Good afternoon, Scott. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, we're glad you're here, and I'd like to kick things off by just simply asking, what made you want to run for Congress and follow Marjorie Taylor Greene?
Well, I want to be a warrior for the people of Northwest Georgia, and I want to be a warrior for President Trump and have his back. And that was one of the things that it was an honor of a lifetime last Wednesday to get his endorsement. One of the things that he told me on that phone call was, Clay, you're a rocket ship. You're a rocket ship. And I told him, I really appreciate the endorsement, sir. And we're going to celebrate this victory and get out on the campaign trail and be the hardest working campaign in Georgia 14 to make sure that we win this on March 10th. So bottom line, I want to be a warrior for Northwest Georgia and have President Trump's back on Capitol Hill.
So to be clear here, this is a special election. There are a lot of people running, but only one person in this race has the endorsement of President Trump, and it is you, Clay Fuller. When you spoke to the president, did you discuss any particular issues with him that he was focused on that day?
No, there were no specific issues that we talked about. One of the things that he made clear was just go out and win this election and make sure that we can support him up there on Capitol Hill. One of the things he told me, he's got an 82% success rate. So he told me, Clay, 82%, Clay. So go and win the thing. So that's what our focus is. And we're going to go out and be the hardest working campaign on the ground and win every vote that we can and be up there fighting for him on March 11th.
Clay, you're tough on crime. That's your record. And we have a lot of issues going on with law and order in this country right now. As you look at what's being done on immigration, as you look at the soft on crime policies of the Democrats around the country, if you make it to Congress, is this going to be an area where you're going to focus, tightening up here on the violent illegal aliens and the violent criminals who are plaguing many communities in America?
That's one of the main campaign issues that I'm out there talking about. So as you said, an America First district attorney, tough on crime. And one of the things that I've seen over the last year with President Trump securing the border, I actually saw our fentanyl prices increase. So meaning that the supply was becoming less and less. We had criminal illegal gangs during the Biden administration who were operating in my judicial circuit, and we saw those individuals being taken out of the country. So when I'm on Capitol Hill, you need prosecutors and you need advocates who can articulate why ICE's mission is so important to enforce federal law. And it's shocking to us that getting a convicted felon out of the country, nothing is more shocking than the case here in Georgia, where an illegal immigrant raped an 11-year-old child. Those are cases that I would recommend we should probably be using the death penalty on. I know that there's a Supreme Court case on point, but that's a pretty good test case to overturn that case with our 6-3 majority on the Supreme Court. So, and one of the main things that I'll be talking about on Capitol Hill is holding our federal judges accountable. It's shocking to me that we weren't able to get Abrego Garcia out of the country because of a federal judge. And honestly, we need to start putting federal judges in prison for ignoring their oath of office.
Clay, when you're out campaigning in the district, what are you hearing from voters? How do they feel about the economy? How are they feeling about having been represented by a Republican congressperson that turned against President Trump? What's the general vibe out in your communities when you're out shaking hands and asking for votes?
It's really good. So they want to see somebody who's defending President Trump's record. They talk about, they understand the bad set of cards that President Trump was given when he took over in January of 2025. They know that we're winning the war on inflation. Prices will start coming down. And the biggest thing, one of the major issues that I jumped into this campaign to do is to support President's reordering of the global economy to make sure that manufacturing is coming back to every community in Georgia 14. Because I want a job where people can stay in our community and raise a family on one salary where their ancestors are buried. Vice President J.D. Vance and I have been on a parallel path. I kind of joke I'm a Dollar General J.D. Vance, but just with a better military service in the Air Force. So those are problems that are near and dear to my heart. Just make sure that that families here in Georgia 14 can raise a family on a salary that they're proud of.
Clay, we've got just a few seconds left. If people want to support your campaign in replacing Marjorie Taylor Greene in Congress, where do they find you online?
So clayfullerforgeorgia.com is the website. You can find out more about my background and information there. Like I was a Trump appointee in the first administration, but we're on X and we're on Facebook and we're on Instagram. So you can find all of our information and campaign material there.
Clay Fuller, he is the Trump-backed candidate in Georgia, special election in March. He'll be replacing Marjorie Taylor Greene. When we come back, more updates from Washington, D.C. It's Scott Jennings on Salem. Stay with us. You know something? Universities are kind of a bad deal. 6 figures of debt for a bachelor's degree that signals less every year. 4 years spent navigating ideological rules instead of learning how to think. Grades inflated, standards lowered, dissent punished. We call it higher education, but it's mostly expensive daycare with a credential attached. The University of Austin, also known as UATX, is different, however. Admissions at UATX are based on test scores alone. No essays, no resumes. Nobody cares who your parents know. If you're smart enough, you're in. UATX students turned down UChicago and fled Barnard to complete a demanding great books core, including Aristotle, Shakespeare, de Tocqueville, alongside real math, science, economics, and AI. Classes are small, professors actually know your name, grades aren't padded, excellence is measured and rewarded. From day one, students work directly with top founders, investors, and institutions, building companies, doing serious research, and landing real internships. And here's the part that changes everything. There is no tuition. Thanks to private donors, every UATX student graduates debt-free. You're free to take risks, free to start companies, and free to build a life instead of paying off loans. If you want an empty credential, look elsewhere. If you want a serious education that actually prepares you to lead, apply to the University of Austin. Visit uaustin.org. That's uaustin.org. Joining us in just a moment, Congressman Brian Stile from Wisconsin. He's just off the House floor. We'll get a Washington update from him shortly. First, a word from our friends at AFP. As America approaches its 250th anniversary, it is worth revisiting one of the most powerful ideas that sprang from our nation's founding, the pursuit of happiness. Our founders envisioned the freedom to work hard, raise a family, and worship freely. They did not envision big government programs and handouts. Our friends at Americans for Prosperity, AFP, believe the pursuit of the American dream is a core part of what makes this country exceptional, and that is why I am proud to partner with them on this special project. If you believe in the American dream and you'd like to celebrate what makes America special, I encourage you to visit a250toolkit.com, a250toolkit.com. Americans there are sharing their stories of how they're keeping the American dream alive. Go to a250toolkit.com, learn more, share your own story, because the American dream isn't a big government program. It is our own individual pursuit of happiness. It's Scott Jennings here on Salem. You're listening to Common Sense for the American People. And joining us now live from the U.S. Capitol, Representative for Wisconsin's 1st Congressional District, Chairman of the Committee on House Administration, as well as the Chairman of the Crypto Subcommittee on the House Financial Services Committee. Please welcome Congressman Brian Stile into the show. Brian, thanks for being here.
Scott, thanks for having me on.
I know you're just off the House floor today. Maybe you can give us a quick update. What are we voting on today? I've seen some back and forth about some House rules votes, and I know we have a very slim majority right now. Give us a little bit of color on what's going on with the House floor at this moment.
Yeah, we're having a little back and forth on the House rule, which is needed as a parliamentary procedure to open up the week on the floor. There's a handful of really important pieces of legislation, the Save America Act being the most important bill in front of us this week. This is always kind of the dance here at the start of the week in the House of Representatives with a narrow majority, but at the end of the day, we'll get this done. We always do. It's just a little bit of a slog.
Congressman, I want to play a little bit of sound for you. This is a hearing that took place this morning. Congressman Eric Swalwell, Democrat from California, was fussing at the acting director of ICE, Todd Lyons. Let's hear cut 10. I want to get Brian's reaction. Cut 10, Swalwell.
Mr. Lyons, will you resign from ICE?
No, sir, I won't.
Why not?
Because, sir, that child that you're showing right there, the men and women of ICE took care of him when his father abandoned him and ran from law enforcement.
Congressman, a lot of propaganda and misinformation from the Democrats on immigration and against ICE this morning. Your reaction, sir?
Well, the Democrats are going to continue their misinformation campaign where their energy should be spent on talking to their elected representatives from blue states and telling their local law enforcement to cooperate with ICE. When local law enforcement is working together with ICE, everyone is safer and ICE can do its job. It's in jurisdictions like Minnesota that have fought back, refused to cooperate where the more challenging environments exist. The Democrats don't want to talk about that, but instead, if we were focused in on working together with local law enforcement, we do a lot of good by removing the worst individuals who are in this country illegally.
Congressman, you referenced that the most important thing going on this week, or one of the most important, is the Save America Act. And I know that you are also touting your new legislation, which you're calling the Mega Act. Please tell us about the Save America Act. Is it going to pass? And then tell us about your new bill. Do they work? How do they work together? Sort of overall, what are the election issues at play here, and why is it so important that these things get passed immediately?
We need to do a number of things to completely reinstall election integrity in our system. The Mega Act includes the full list. The Save America Act picks up the two most important that we're going to move first. In the Save America Act, it's about making sure that it's only U.S. citizens who are voting in U.S. elections, coupled with photo identification, two absolutely essential election integrity provisions which will come before the House of Representatives later this week. As we continue to build on that, I think there's more work to be done. I think we need to have paper ballots. We need clean voter rolls. You need to ban ranked choice voting. You got to stop people from ballot harvesting, and down the list. Out of the gates, the Save America Act is focused in on those two key provisions, photo identification, U.S. citizenship verification to be able to vote in U.S. elections.
Yet Democrats continue to take the wrong side of an 80-20 issue. The American people want voter ID in this country. Democrats want it. Republicans want it. White voters, black voters, Hispanic voters, men, women, tall, short. Every kind of voter in America wants common sense voter ID. They only want American citizens voting in elections, yet your colleagues in Washington are adhering to these crazy talking points, do they actually believe the things that are coming out of their mouth right now?
Well, I held a hearing earlier today on the administration committee that I chair about these key election integrity reforms, and we heard the Democrats double down on their language. This is the same language that they used in 2021 when the state of Georgia put forward and implemented election integrity legislation. If we remember back about 4 years ago, then President Biden called the Georgia law Jim Crow 2.0. If you listen today, you're hearing Chuck Schumer call the Save America Act Jim Crow 2.0. But we can look back at the state of Georgia and say, how did it actually play out? The state of Georgia has held two major statewide elections since they passed their election integrity legislation. And what we see is strong participation, positive experiences, and people having more confidence in how the elections are operating. We have the opportunity to do that, not just in the state of Georgia, but to move that across the entire nation by passing the Save America Act and implementing these key reforms. And in particular, photo identification is so obvious. It's so common sense. It's why it's popular. If you want to board an airplane, you want to open a bank account, or you want to buy a six-pack of beer, you ultimately need a photo identification. It makes sense that we also need that to be able to vote. I think that's why you're going to see it pass on the House floor, and hopefully we pull Democrats with us, although the majority of Democrats will continue to use their talking points and tell you that this is some sort of a bad bill.
That's Congressman Brian Stile of Wisconsin, that voice you're hearing today on the Scott Jennings Show. Congressman, your MEGA Act, and you mentioned it a moment ago, raises the issue of ranked choice voting. We've seen this push in some states and some municipalities. You'd like to ban ranked choice voting. Tell us why.
Ranked choice voting causes massive confusion with voters. And the challenge that we have is, how do we reinstall election confidence and election integrity across the system? You want to have one person, one vote. What you don't want is rigged choice voting, which is how states have implemented this across the country. And so the MEGA Act picks up all the key election integrity provisions that we need. You got to be able to have audible paper ballots. You got to ban ballot harvesting. What you want is photo ID and citizenship verification, which are parts of the SAVE Act as well. But ranked choice voting is a setup by Democrats to try to rig elections in otherwise Republican states to get the candidate of their choice across the line. But at the crux of it, it really confuses the electorate. Results in particular aren't known on the day of the election. And when results aren't known on the day of the election, that sows a lot of confusion and distrust inside the election system. It's why we should ban ranked choice voting.
Congressman Brian Stile of Wisconsin is our guest. Shifting focus to housing. We have a housing shortage in America. Prices are high. Recently, the House passed a bill called the Housing for the 21st Century Act. I know you were a big supporter of this. It's cutting costs and red tape for American consumers. Tell us about this bill and how it's going to help people own a home.
This was a big legislative success, which passed the House of Representatives in overwhelming numbers. It's a real opportunity to do two key things. One, break through the regulatory red tape that exists at the federal, state, and local level. And we need to do that because we need to build more housing. At the end of the day, we're about 6 million housing units short in the United States. This is one of the biggest drivers that's driving up costs for families who are trying to get into their first home or a bigger home as their family grows. Making sure that we are increasing supply by cutting regulatory red tape is the focus of the Housing Act that passed the House of Representatives. And what we're trying to do is bring down that cost of housing so that families can move into a home that they need.
Congressman Stile, you serve on the Financial Services Committee, and specifically you run the subcommittee that deals with cryptocurrency. There's a lot of volatility in crypto right now. What are some of the key proposals coming out of your subcommittee that Americans need to be aware of?
There is volatility inside the crypto space. It's all the more reason that we need the regulatory framework that we call Clarity. Clarity passed the House of Representatives and puts in place a regulatory framework that does two key things. One, it protects consumers with appropriate disclosures. That's important. But it also sets up the United States to outcompete, in particular, China. What we saw under the Biden administration was anti-crypto legislation that had two negative implications. One, it prevented the United States from being the leader in innovation and development in this space. But two, it shifted that outside the United States of America. And so as we look at, for example, the FTX debacle or other challenges that we have seen, the bulk of those challenges have occurred outside the United States. President Biden was pushing that outside the United States, putting his head in the sand alongside the Securities and Exchange Commissioner, Gary Gensler. As President Trump has come in and declared that this is going to be the golden age of digital assets, we have put forward a pro-digital assets agenda, building out that regulatory framework so that there is clarity for people that want to innovate and develop in the United States. Is good for business in the United States. It's good for jobs. And it provides the consumer protections that are needed to make sure people understand that they are safe engaging in the space.
Congressman, final question. How is the work going on banning members of Congress from trading stocks? A lot of conversation around that. Do you think that will happen this year?
I am optimistic that it will. I introduced the Stop Insider Trading Act. We are approaching 100 members of Congress who've co-sponsored the legislation. I have a commitment from leadership that they will bring this legislation to the House floor, and we passed it out of committee 8-4. So we have an opportunity to prevent members of Congress from buying stocks once they become members, to have pre-disclosure if there's a sale. The goal here is to make sure that the American people know their member of Congress is coming to Washington to serve them, not to line their pockets. It's my view that if an individual wants to day trade, there's a place for that, and it's called Wall Street. We don't want people coming to Washington to trade stocks. We want you to come to Washington to serve and move this country forward.
Congressman Brian Stile of Wisconsin, thanks for joining us, and good luck in the House this week. A little bit of news on aches and pains, and we have a letter here from Tom in Texas, age 85. Tom was having issues, pain, keeping him from riding his bike and flying small aircraft. He was a flight instructor. What did he do? He called up Relief Factor. Now his lower back pain is gone, hip pain virtually gone, some long-standing issues with his fingers improving. If you want to be like Tom from Texas, and I don't know why you wouldn't, you will call Relief Factor and you will try their 3-week quick start and see how it works for you. You call 1-800-4RELIEF or you visit ReliefFactor.com, 1-800-4RELIEF or visit ReliefFactor.com. How would it feel to be out of pain? We might get you the answer if you try Relief Factor. Coming up, Gabe Kaminsky from the Free Press is here. Big story on Kamala Harris. You don't want to miss it. Stay with us.
The very definition of never back down. Here's Scott Jennings.
It is Tuesday, February 10th. We have a story for you today about massive amounts of dark money flowing through Democratic politics. Joining us is Gabe Kaminsky from the Free Press. He's got a story today about a $37.5 million contribution that helped Kamala Harris in 2024 that is raising red flags. Gabe is an investigative reporter for the Free Press. He covers the intersection of money, politics, and influence in Washington, D.C. You can find him on the X platform at G.E. Kaminsky. Gabe, thanks for joining us. And what is the deal with this huge amount of money?
Scott, great to be with you. As we reported in the Free Press, $37.5 million flowed from Fidelity Investments Charitable Gift Fund, which is what is called a donor-advised fund. It's one of the largest in the country. In fact, it's an organization that moves the nonprofit 501c3 charity that moves the money of donors and does so anonymously. And what we actually found is that Fidelity Investments made this very large transfer that was newly disclosed during the 2024 election to another organization called Bright Future Fund, which spent tens of millions of dollars to try to elect Kamala Harris. It's a 501c4 rather than Fidelity, which is a different kind of tax status in which groups do not disclose their donors. But this grant was on Fidelity's tax forms. And the interesting discrepancy that we found is that on Fidelity's own tax forms, they claimed that they did not give any money to organizations that are not charities, in a few different places, actually. And that is factually untrue, and they certified this to the IRS. And so that large amount of money and that lack of disclosure is something that tax experts find notable and believe that this group that, again, played an outsized role in 2024, that Fidelity should have to update its financial disclosures. And so tax experts have that contention at the same time that some conservative groups we spoke to also have concerns because money from charities to 501c4s, these two different nonprofits, there's just sort of a higher bar of what that money should be for. Charities are organized for charitable purposes, right? So foundations that give to non-political causes. And a group like Bright Future Fund that went to support Kamala Harris has a completely different mission. And so that's kind of the story in it. And it, talk to tax experts and these conservatives who outline those concerns.
And Gabe, tell us, what is this money used for? $37.5 million. Is this going to political advocacy, voter registration? Give us an idea of the activities that Bright Future Fund was engaged in.
Yeah, so Bright Future Fund spent lots of money on what they define as nonpartisan voter registration. That's something that conservatives might rebut. But a large portion of its money, however, did actually go to political efforts. And so it transferred millions of dollars to Future Forward PAC, which is a political action committee that made ads for Kamala Harris in support of Kamala Harris. They also transferred money to other Democratic groups, political groups that worked to elect Democrats in Congress. And so there is an ambiguity and blurriness about, right, the transfer of funds between the charity to the other organization. Fidelity claimed to me on the record that the money was only for charitable purposes. But the reason, tax experts and conservatives spoke to still have concerns is because of the lack of disclosure on Fidelity's own tax forms of Bright Future Fund as a non-charity.
Bright Future Fund shut down shortly after filing its tax return. Is that normal, or does that raise accountability concerns in your mind?
It's unclear why they shut down, but it's particularly interesting, right, because they spent massive amounts of dark money to support Democrats in the election, and then 2 days after they filed their tax form, they shut down. Now, I don't know why they shut down. The organization did not get back to us. The law firm that incorporated it, Elias Law Firm, did not respond to us. But it certainly is, as far as the influence of anonymous money in elections and the fact that they spent all this money and then just shut down, it's a pretty good look at how anonymous donations fuel elections. I mean, this group they might relaunch in 2028. They may not. I'm not aware. But it's lots of money that was, spent in the election, and we won't necessarily know where it all went and where it came from.
Yeah, on the one hand, Gabe, for us conservatives, it seems like Democrats are constantly decrying the influence of dark money in our politics, yet are more than happy to take it and use it, even to the tune of $37.5 million. Gabe Kaminsky is an investigative reporter. His work is in the Free Press. I encourage you to look it up today. Gabe, thank you for joining us. This hour is closing up. I do want to remind you briefly about the cruise that Mike Gallagher and I are taking in November. Text the word cruise to 94878 if you want to join us. You have a personal invitation from me. We have more to come in the next hour. It's Common Sense for the American People. I'm Scott Jennings. You're listening on Salem.
The voice of free speech. The truth delivered. Common sense for the American people. Welcome to the Scott
It is Tuesday, February 10th. Scott Jennings here with Common Sense for the American People. Quick check of the headlines before we get to our first guest, author Peter Schweitzer, standing by. We have breaking news in the Nancy Guthrie disappearance case. The FBI director, Kash Patel, has released home camera footage. This is doorbell camera footage. Let's put it up on the screen for those watching on the Salem News Channel. This is door cam footage of a man in a ski mask approaching the front door. If you're watching it, you can see it. If you're listening on radio, what you're seeing is a man in a ski mask approaching the door of Nancy Guthrie and obviously messing with a set of flowers on the front door, trying to cover up the camera perhaps. But this is the first time we have seen any sort of person of interest on video. All of this footage, if you're listening on radio, by the way, is circulating on social media. You can see it. It has been issued by the FBI Director Kash Patel. But this is the first big breaking news we've had in some time on the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie. We'll continue to follow this story. The Epstein files are also in the news today. There are new details that sharply undercut years of media and Democrat speculation and assertions about Donald Trump. Newly released FBI interview records confirm that Trump personally contacted Florida police in 2006 during the original Jeffrey Epstein investigation, and not to shield Epstein, but to support law enforcement going after him. According to the former Palm Beach police chief, Trump called investigators and praised them for pursuing the case. He warned about Epstein abusing underage girls. Trump also flagged Ghislaine Maxwell as evil, and he urged the police in Florida to focus on her role in recruiting victims. This is all in the Epstein files. Trump was right. The entire narrative around him and Epstein was a hoax perpetrated by Democrats to deflect away from their own problems. The police chief told federal investigators that Trump was the only prominent figure who proactively reached out to assist their investigation at a time when Epstein was surrounded by powerful friends and enablers. The FBI records also reinforce longstanding reports that Epstein was barred from Mar-a-Lago after inappropriate conduct there. And there is more. Additional documents show Democratic Congresswoman Stacey Plaskett communicated with Epstein using a fake name, presumably to shield herself from scrutiny. Reports indicate Plaskett used a pseudonym while exchanging messages with Epstein in connection with official matters, raising new questions as more names surface in the expanding Epstein document release. We'll have more to come as the Epstein files continue to be reviewed, but it seems to me there's vindication here for Trump and more trouble for Democrats than the media has ever wanted you to know. It's Scott Jennings on Salem. Joining us this hour, author Peter Schweitzer is here, investigative reporter and New York Times best-selling author. He's here to discuss his new book, The Invisible Coup, How American Elites and Foreign Powers Use Immigration as a Weapon. Peter is #1 on the New York Times bestseller list for a second week in a row. Peter Schweitzer, honored to have you here on the Scott Jennings Show. Welcome, sir.
Oh, well, I'm honored to be here, Scott. Thanks so much for having me.
Peter, what made you decide that now was the right moment to write The Invisible Coup? What bothered you enough to put this book together and get it out to the American people?
Well, Scott, as you know, as an author yourself, I mean, it takes time to write something. This was a 2-year process. I started working on this book in the spring of 2024 when people were streaming across the border, and we've had this vigorous debate in our country about immigration as it relates to wages, crime on our streets, et cetera. Very important conversation. But I felt like we were missing some of the deeper implications, what I call the weaponization of immigration. And that's really what I try to expose in the book, pointing out that when people come here, they not only bring themselves, maybe family members, their language and their culture, they also bring political networks. And these are political networks that are designed to undermine the United States. And they're waging essentially civilizational warfare on us. Those are the phrases they use, those are not mine myself.
Peter, in your book, you argue that immigration is far beyond just an argument about border security, but it is a coordinated strategy aimed at America. In plain English, what alarm are you sounding here for the American people about the crisis of immigration in our country?
Well, we have to look at our adversaries and how they are weaponizing immigration. So, for example, China has on an industrial scale exploited birthright citizenship. This is, of course, the idea that if you are born here in the United States, you're automatically granted U.S. citizenship. China's exploited this on a massive scale through a birth tourism industry that the CCP has encouraged. And what that means is they will fly a pregnant woman to the United States. She gives birth here. The child is given a birth certificate, U.S. citizenship. And then when the child is old enough to travel, after a couple of weeks, they fly back to China where the child is raised. We don't keep track of those numbers in the United States. We have no idea how many people have done it. But in China, they've estimated the numbers, and the numbers are eye-popping. They're saying, Scott, that every year for the past 13 years, roughly 100,000 Chinese babies have been born in the United States and are returned to China. So what does that mean? That means that there are more than 1 million, quote-unquote, U.S. citizens being raised in mainland China. When they turn 18 in China, They're going to be able to vote, donate to political campaigns, apply for government jobs. This is a massive, massive exploitation of our immigration system. Countries like Mexico and movements like the Muslim Brotherhood, they have different methodologies, but the goal is the same, to subvert the United States through immigration.
The book is called The Invisible Coup. The author is Peter Schweitzer. He's with us here on the Scott Jennings Show. Peter, you did a lot of reporting on China. You also detail a U.S. visa program that was linked to a Chinese spy that funneled money into American politics. Tell us about how that system operated. What does it tell us about foreign influence in our elections?
Yeah, great question, Scott. This is the EB-5 visa program. Sounds like an interesting idea. This was a law that was passed in the early 1990s, which said if you invest $1 million in the United States and you create a certain number of jobs, you can get permanent resident status in the United States. Okay, maybe that idea is a good idea. The problem is the person that pushed this and got this passed in Congress was a lobbyist named Maria Tsai, who it turns out later was a Chinese spy. So we have this visa program as a result of the efforts of a Chinese spy. And so it's not surprising that this program is dominated by Chinese nationals. More than 90% of the people that get permanent resident status in our country this way are Chinese nationals. The problem is, Scott, is that they don't actually spend much time living here. They remain in China. So why would they want permanent resident status in the United States if they're not living here? The answer is very curious and shocked me. And the fact is, if you have permanent resident status in the United States, even if you live in China, you can't vote in our elections, but guess what? You can donate to our political campaigns. So this visa program allows Chinese elites to put tens of millions of dollars into U.S. political campaigns. We document a lot of that in the book. Suffice it to say that money breaks 80 to 20 Democrat Republican, but it's a massive campaign vulnerability. And we need to look at closing this loophole. The notion that foreign nationals that aren't living here, that can't vote in our elections, are financing campaigns, I think is a massive national security problem.
The author is Peter Schweitzer. His #1 book on the New York Times list is called The Invisible Coup. 30 seconds, Peter. I'll just ask you a simple question. Is the United States of America under attack from foreign countries? Is that what you uncovered in this book?
Yes, I did. And the good news is I had a meeting with President Trump in the Oval Office for about 55 minutes before the book came out. The Treasury Secretary Bessent and the Secretary of State Marco Rubio were there as well. I went through the facts, and I think we're going to see some action on some of these fronts. So in that basis, I'm encouraged. But yes, we are absolutely under assault, and we need to view immigration in that context. And then once we address these issues, we can look at the broader debate of how much legal immigration do we want.
The author, Peter Schweitzer, the book, The Invisible Coup. It is #1 for a reason. Eye-popping data, information, and evidence that the United States is under attack from our foreign adversaries. Peter, thank you for joining us here on the Scott Jennings Show. A quick word from our friends at Relief Factor. The latest listener story coming in from Keith in Washington, an active man, former college athlete, a martial arts instructor, teaching multiple classes a day. Somebody that active, though, he was feeling worn down. He had knee pain, he had neck pain. He tries Relief Factor, and voila, he's able to keep training, and he was able to earn his black belt. We're using it in the Jennings household. My father, no spring chicken, but he's hopping around like one down in Florida as we speak. I spoke to him this morning. He played golf today. He said, thanks to Relief Factor, absolutely no pain on the golf course. Try their 3-week quick start. Relief Factor. You don't want to miss this opportunity. Call 1-800-4RELIEF or visit relieffactor.com. Let's see if we can get you out of pain. When we come back, we'll talk about body cams and Democrats' about face. Stay with us here on The Scott Jennings Show.
Straight talk without the bluster. When you positively need the truth, this is where you come. The Scott Jennings Show.
It is Tuesday, February 10th. Scott Jennings on Salem. Common sense for the American people. I want to talk to you for a few minutes about this body camera business. I honestly couldn't believe what I read in Politico over the weekend. You won't believe it either. You know, for months, Democrats told us that the answer to every dispute involving ICE was simple: body cameras. They said it on cable news. They said it in press conferences. They said it in letters. legislation, floor speeches. Chuck Schumer said immigration agents should lose the masks and add body cameras. Hakeem Jeffries called body cameras a common sense reform. House Democrats demanded body cameras as a condition of oversight. The message could not have been more clear. If ICE had body cameras, we'd finally know the truth. Okay, fine. Cameras it is. The Trump administration, Homeland Secretary Kristi Noem said, we'll send body cameras to ICE agents in Minnesota. And yet, listen to this headline from Politico, and I quote, Democrats fear body cameras could be ICE's new mass surveillance tool. What now? Mass surveillance? These are the same cameras that Democrats had been demanding, the same ones they said were necessary, the same cameras that they told the country would bring accountability and justice. What changed? Well, I'll tell you what changed. The cameras are turning on, and now Democrats are worried about what they might show. Suddenly, they're not worried about transparency, it's privacy concerns. Suddenly, they're not worried about getting the truth. They're worrying about who controls this video. There's no coincidence here, it's a tell. Body cameras do not lie, they do not spin. They don't post on social media. They don't attend activist trainings. They just record reality. The reality is, if your entire political strategy depends on unverified accusations, selectively edited clips, and instant outrage before the facts come out, then body cameras destroy that model. Body cameras take away the radical's favorite weapon, the ability to lie about law enforcement. With body cameras, the public gets to see everything. And that's why panic is setting in. Let's be honest. If Chuck Schumer truly believed that body cameras were about accountability, he'd be cheering this today. If Hakeem Jeffries meant common sense when he said it, he wouldn't be trying to wrap that common sense in new restrictions and fine print. Real transparency doesn't come with an escape hatch, folks. Here is the truth that Democrats now won't say. The Trump administration called their bluff, and the Democrats don't have the courage to tell you the truth, that body cameras overwhelmingly protect and support law enforcement. They document the professionalism of law enforcement, of ICE. They expose false allegations, and they repeatedly show restraint under enormous pressure. And when the footage contradicts the activist narrative, well, that's not surveillance, that's evidence. This was never about civil liberties. It's about narrative control. Oh, they loved the body cameras when they thought they'd confirm the worst accusations, but they hate them now that they're actually in action, and they might show that ICE agents actually, most often, do their jobs lawfully, calmly, and correctly in the face of angry mobs. Don't let Democrats have it both ways. If you defended and demanded body cameras before, you don't get to freak out when they arrive. If you preached transparency before, you don't get to flinch when the truth comes out in HD. The American people don't need more spin from Democrats. What we need here are the facts, and that's exactly what body cameras are finally going to deliver. The Democratic hypocrisy on this obviously knows no bounds. Scott Jennings with you on Salem. Quickly, I want to go back to our cruise. We're taking one in November. I'm excited about it. Mike Gallagher and I are going on the Gulf of America cruise. We will sail upon turquoise waters. Our feet will touch the white sand beaches. We will eat incredible food. We will have insightful conversations with you, our listeners, about the future of this country. It's Gallagher and it's Jennings diving into the issues shaping America just after the elections. To get a cabin, they're going fast. Text the word cruise to 94878 or visit scottjenningsshow.com and click on the Gulf of America cruise banner. We look forward to seeing you on the high seas. When we come back, the latest tracking of New York City Mayor Zoran Mamdani. You'll want to hear it. David Brody is with us. It's Scott Jennings on Salem. Stay with us.
He's the author of the best-selling book, A Revolution of Common Sense. Here's Scott Jennings.
I am looking at a report. This is a consumer tracking report, Consumer Trends. Here's the headline. Americans spend more on OnlyFans than both the New York Times and ChatGPT combined. We're spending more on OnlyFans than we are on the New York Times. I don't know what to make of that. I don't have an MBA. There is a way for the New York Times to solve this. Not sure if they're ready to take that step. Well, maybe we'll get an MBA on here someday to tell us. All right, tracking the latest out of New York City under the new mayor, Zoran Mamdani. One thing is clear, Jewish residents in New York no longer feel safe on the streets. There's a reason for that. And on the line with us now, David Brody, news producer and chief political analyst for the Christian Broadcasting Network, the CBN, a storied career. He has a new story about how anti-Semitism has exploded in New York City since Mamdani took office. Let's hear a little bit of the new Brody report, cut number 9.
Mayor Mamdani lives here at Gracie Mansion behind me on the Upper East Side of New York. Now, we have asked multiple times for an on-camera interview, but so far, no response. Mamdani says he wants to root out anti-Semitism across all 5 boroughs, but so far, his actions have not matched his rhetoric. His words sound good on the surface.
Protecting Jewish New Yorkers is going to be a focus of my administration. I'm looking forward to being the mayor for every New Yorker, for every Jewish New Yorker.
Conservative Jewish New Yorkers, however, say they don't trust him.
And with us today is David Brody. Welcome to the Scott Jennings Show, my friend. Glad you're here.
Hey, Scott, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Of course. David, you reported in your story a 182% spike in anti-Semitic hate crimes in New York City in January alone. Can you put that number in context for viewers and explain how these hate crimes are happening out on the street?
Yeah, and it's more frequency. Every single day we're seeing it. I mean, look, when I was there was graffiti in a children's playground, and that's just one of just many that crop up throughout the week. When I was there in New York just for a couple of days, but this is 180% increase since January of last year. And the last time I checked, Mamdani has been mayor just in this January. So he wasn't mayor last January, if you will, and that's the end of that. So look, there's a lot of problems here, Scott, but here's one of the most significant problems, that Mamdani is doing nothing about any sort of buffer zone, if you will, for protests. He's letting the protesters go right in front of the synagogue, blocking the entrance at times. So that's something to keep a mindful watch on. New Yorkers don't trust him as far as they can throw him.
Yeah, how much of the Jewish community's alarm is also tied to his policy and rhetoric versus just the appointments that he's making? I mean, he says things and then he appoints people that obviously have made terrible comments on social media and in their previous professional lives. Does he ever take any responsibility for those people and what message that sends to the Jewish community in New York City?
None at all. And obviously the personnel has been a problem, but quite frankly, it's just been, let's just start with the low-hanging fruit. I mean, the fact that he won't condemn globalize the Intifada, he won't condemn River to the Sea. I mean, that's kind of like I said, the low-hanging fruit, and he won't even do that. He hasn't done that ever since he stepped onto the national stage. But beyond that, look, every single New York mayor has marched in the Israel parade there in New York. I mean, all the way back to into the 60s. But no, not Mamdani. He's saying, I'm not going to march in the Israel parade. He's not going to do that. If Benjamin Netanyahu, as we know, comes to New York, he'll have him arrested. Boycott, divestment, and sanctions. Knock yourself out, New York City employees. You know, the mayor before this, Eric Adams, said, no, we're not going to let New York City employees do anything with boycott, divestment, sanctions at all. But Mamdani is saying, I got no problem with that. And then, of course, in terms of the Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, he has had problems with that, so he's rescinded the definition there. In essence, it's too broad for his taste. So you put all that together, they've got a lot of problems with him.
I've heard from many Jewish leaders, they want a clear, unequivocal rejection of the phrase globalize the intifada. You referenced that a moment ago. Has Mamdani ever directly addressed this demand? It would be easy for him to do, but what's he said about that lately?
He says it's not the language he would use, but he doesn't want, then he does the whole First Amendment free speech, yada, 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 Seinfeld routine. But, give me a break. I mean, how do you not just say that is simply not appropriate? I mean, it's not that hard to say, but obviously for Mamdani it is. And clearly Jewish New Yorkers believe there's a reason for it. Look, I grew up as a Jewish New Yorker. I've got a little street cred in the game, if you will. I grew up as a Reformed Jew in New York. I gave my life to Christ in 1988. I'm a born-again evangelical now, but I'm Ancestry DNA 100% Ashkenazi Jew. So I know how this operates. I've seen this script before in other places, but in New York especially, it's troubling. And here's the problem for Mamdani, quite frankly, Scott. It's not just Orthodox Jews. It's not just conservative Jews. There are Reform rabbis that have real concerns. I went to a Reform temple. I was bar mitzvahed and everything, Temple Emmanuel in New York City. There are Reform Jews that say, we've got some problems with Mamdani's ideology. So this runs the gamut across all different sects of Judaism.
This is David Brody from the Christian Broadcasting Network, our special guest here in the 2 o'clock hour today on the Scott Jennings Show. He has a new report about the dramatic increase in anti-Semitic attacks in just the month of January in New York City. David, I'm interested in how law enforcement is reacting to all of this. Did you talk to anyone in the NYPD? Did you talk to police sources about this dramatic rise in anti-Semitic incidents? If so, what are they saying about it? And do they have anything to say about whether or what they've been ordered to do about it by the mayor's office?
The protesters that I talked to specifically that have been talking to law enforcement, we were there about 24 to 48 hours. So we were talking to a lot of the, when I say the protesters, I'm talking about the pro-Zionist protesters who were there to combat the radicals on the other side. They're saying that law enforcement understands the problem, but their hands are tied, at least for the moment. They're not quite sure what they're going to do in terms of the limbo state that they're in. So because of that, that makes Jewish New Yorkers even more concerned, because the problem here, there's so many layers to this problem, but the big problem is kind of what you said at the top there, which is this whole idea that he says one thing that sounds flowery and nice to get him, to buy him some time, but his actions are completely different. And I think with the NYPD is the same thing. In other words, he talks about buffer zones as like, yes, everybody needs to be safe, but then he won't go and pull the trigger on a buffer zone and make sure they are safe. So it's that type of rhetoric not matching the reality.
I'm really interested in this promise that he made both during the campaign and after, that he would send the New York Police Department to arrest Benjamin Netanyahu if he set foot in New York City. What do you think the NYPD would do if the mayor ordered them to go arrest a foreign head of state like Netanyahu, who, by the way, runs a country that is an ally of the United States?
That's a legitimate, not only is it a legitimate question, it's an unanswered question, and I'm a little bit afraid of the answer. I'll be honest with you. You would like to say that they would stand up and do something about it, but what are you going to do exactly in that situation if you got the mayor ordering the NYPD to do exactly what they don't want to do? I don't know. That's part of the problem here, is that the uncertainty. Why are we even talking about this, right? I mean, what in the world is going on? That Benjamin Netanyahu could potentially be arrested in New York. I mean, that's what it's come to. Because of Mamdani's policies? Look, I think that it's an unanswered question, and the fact that it is an unanswered question should say everything we need to know about the situation there.
A lot of people, David, were shocked the other day, I certainly was, when Mayor Mamdani was quoting the Prophet Muhammad and his words to defend and explain why everybody should just accept open borders and unfettered immigration in New York and generally in the United States. Have you spoken to anyone since he made that speech? I assume there was lots of alarm among certain communities in New York City over how the mayor decided to make those comments and doing it so publicly.
Well, I haven't spoken to New York Jews since those comments, but I'll say this, that what we have seen, and here's the connection, we saw Andy Beshear, the governor of Kentucky, on The View talking about how faith and his liberal policies work together. And that seems to be the common DNA. You've got Mamdani preaching Muhammad and faith and all of that. You've got Beshear preaching liberal policies and basically saying gender affirming care, as they like to call it, is okay because I guess the Bible apparently is okay with that. No, it's not. This just into Andy Beshear. But this is what liberals do, and this is what Mamdani is doing in New York. They take their faith and they try to play to the better angels, the compassion aspect of it. The problem is, as we know in the Christian faith, the social justice gospel is not the gospel. The gospel is law and order and compassion both, not just compassion. And we see that coming up on both sides of this, not just with Mamdani, but also with liberal Christians.
Yeah, I played some of the clips that Andy Beshear had from The View yesterday. This weaponization of faith, you see James Tallarico in Texas doing it as well. The attempts to contort extraordinarily grotesque liberal views, say on mutilation of children and abortion and other issues, to try to contort that and to rationalize it by saying the Bible tells me to do this or God would want us to do this, and then to shame people who say, no, I don't think so. It really is a troubling trend on the progressive left. I think they believe it's going to appeal to moderate or conservative voters in middle America, but I don't think they're right. David, I'll give you the last word, 30 seconds.
I would agree with you, and I would say that you can go back to Obama, right? The golden rule. I mean, he kind of started that Matthew 25 social justice gospel. He introduced it into the political lexicon. And ever since then, the Democrats have actually turned away from that, which is interesting. That was somewhat of a winning ticket for them if they massaged it and messaged it right, but they haven't done it.
That's David Brody. He is the chief political correspondent for the Christian Broadcasting Network. David is on CBN. Find him online. Find him on your television. He has an eye-popping new report about the spike in anti-Semitic crime in New York City just in the last month since Mamdani became the mayor. David, thanks for joining us on the show today.
Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it.
When it comes to wireless service, here's what most people don't realize. There is a company that you can choose that actually shares your values. In fact, they invest in your values. The name of this company, Patriot Mobile, it's not just a wireless provider. They are an activist organization. They fund their Christian conservative activism by selling top-tier cell phone service. They stand in the gap when other companies are too afraid. The company is called Patriot Mobile. You will get premium service from them. In fact, you might even get better coverage than you get on the three major U.S. networks. Unlimited plans, mobile hotspots, international roaming, all the same service, maybe better, but from a company that actually shares and invests in your values. I'm a customer. Glad to be with him. Take a stand. Go to patriotmobile.com/Scott or call 972-PATRIOT. Use promo code Scott. They'll give you a free month. patriotmobile.com/Scott or call 972-PATRIOT and make the switch today. It's common sense for the American people. More after this.
Now, for America's favorite pundit, it's Scott Jennings.
It's Tuesday, February 10th. This just into the Scott Jennings Show. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt at the podium. Let's hear cut 15.
I will just point out that there are a lot of wins in the news this week that people in this room have not asked about because you continue to ask questions about the same subject, so let me point them out for you. Again, on Friday, the Dow shattered 50,000 for the first time ever. This week, the American Society of Plastic Surgeons came out in opposition to gender mutilation surgeries for children. They are the first major medical group to do so. A federal appeals court today, nobody asked about that, just upheld the Trump administration's policy of detaining illegal aliens, validating the strong measures that have driven illegal crossings to historic lows and sent a crystal clear message that under President Trump, if you enter the country illegally, you will be detained and removed. The murder rate, again, not a single question about this, has plunged to a 125-year low as crime falls across the board thanks to President Trump's crime crackdown. We also saw this week national median rents have fallen to a 4-year low following 6 consecutive monthly declines, and mortgage affordability has surged to a 4-year high. Home ownership is the core foundation principle of the American dream, and I will repeat that mortgage affordability this week surged to a 4-year high, but not a single of mention of that in this briefing room today. And again, this came out last Friday, but for an unprecedented 9th straight month, there were 0 illegal border crossings at the southern border. So we're going to get back to business. The president is very busy today, and you will see him all tomorrow at the event in the East Room touting his administration's energy policy. Thank you.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt battling the reporters today. Wrapping up the show today, a story out of my home area, Louisville, Kentucky. A local judge there named Tracy Davis in the courtroom had a convicted rapist and kidnapper in front of her. The jury recommended 65 years. The judge here, Tracy Davis, cut it in half to only 30 years. Let's listen to this crazy story. Cut 7.
But Judge Davis thought the jury's recommendation was too long. She feels he hasn't mentally matured yet and never had a real shot at getting any help early in life.
But if you were to come in here and instead of being hurt and angry, which is what this court hears, right, as a 20-year-old African-American male that has been, experienced this society, etc., and you would show that, yes, okay, this is the situation. This is who I am. I don't want to be this person anymore. I don't want to be in jail for forever.
Thompson repeatedly stated he did not care, not about his sentence, the victim, or her family. But Judge Davis emphasized she's the one that holds the pen, and regardless of what the media may think, she applies the law. To her, 65 years was an extremely long time. As she puts it, it's his whole life, one she doesn't believe should be spent entirely behind bars.
This court does not believe that Mr. Thompson, if given the resources that he can get while incarcerated, is beyond being rehabilitated.
That was from Wave Television in Louisville, Kentucky. Folks, there is a sickness in our judicial system, activist judges, specifically at the local level, with ulterior, non-legal motives when they are deciding serious criminal justice cases. In this case, a man convicted of rape and kidnapping was sitting in front of a judge. A jury recommended 65 years. The man expressed no remorse, promised more violence, could have cared less about what he had done to the victim, what he had done to his community. And we have an activist judge sitting on the bench saying, I think I'm going to actually cut this sentence in half because of the color of this man's skin. I think I'm going to cut this sentence in half because I don't think he was treated fairly by society. This has nothing to do with the law, ladies and gentlemen. This has everything to do with judicial activism, social engineering. It's not legal. We can't allow this to continue. If your judges are locally elected, you have to pay attention to what they were doing. You have to protect the rule of law. We have seen this play out in communities across the country. Judges letting violent people off with lenient sentences. They wind up back out on the streets. And guess what? The most likely tell that you will commit a violent act is if you've already committed one. And yet there are judges in Louisville, Kentucky, in North Carolina, in states across this country that are more than happy to go outside the law and put violent people back out into the streets to terrorize and victimize you. Vote like your life depends on it. It probably does. We're done for the day. Back tomorrow. It's Scott Jennings on Salem. Thanks for listening.
Common sense for the American people. This is the Scott Jennings Show.